Chaz, I want to first talk to you about walking on to a D1 wrestling team, right? So for those of you in our community that aren't super sports oriented or into wrestling as much, Division 1 wrestling is the highest level of college wrestling in the country. And for many people, it's a goal, but it's scholarship based, right? Everybody wants to be a scholarship wrestler. And when you come in with a scholarship, you have a certain status and there's money invested in you. And the university has a certain expectation of your talent. But when you come on as a walk-on, it's completely the opposite. So give me an idea of what it was like walking in there the first day as a walk-on, the emotions you went through, and then a couple things you had to overcome moving from walk-on to national qualifier that will stick with you the rest of your life.
Well, my dad and my mom had me when they were in college, and my dad walked on and played football at Wyoming. And so, as a little boy, seeing my dad, he's like Superman. And I hear stories like he walked on, he earned a scholarship, he is a Wyoming Cowboy. That's all I wanted to be growing up. So an expectation of a scholarship wasn't really there for me. That would have been great, but I kind of knew that that's kind of the route I wanted to take. Seeing how my dad always talked about it's a tougher road. And wrestling's a little different than football because there's only like 32 spots on the team and there's only 9.9 full scholarships to give out. And so that's divided amongst a whole bunch of people. Some of the people are on 50% scholarships. Some people are on 100, if you're really good. Um, but but I didn't feel really out of place all that much because our coach did a good job of letting us like keeping some the finances and scholarship information private. You didn't really know exactly who was walking on and who had some money with them,
But you knew who the blue chippers were,
of course, yeah,
right? You
absolutely.
know who the
There's
guy is that's been winning every title around the nation since he was a little kid that comes in the room. And as a walk on, like for a lot of times, you're there to be a training partner for a while. And like
yeah.
you said, it's a hard road. So what that first workout, do you remember who your partner was and how rough was it?
Well, our first workout, our coach kind of tricked us because our first workout my freshman year, we played games. And so we're all the freshmen and new guys are laughing and thinking that this is going to be awesome. And then the next day, we went through a drill called the no name drill where one guy sprints a whole bunch and comes back on some fresh guys and we just hand fight guys clubbing on your head. And I went with a veteran and you kind of realize like, oh man, I'm at the next level. I'm getting my butt kicked a little bit here. But it was good. I had that whole preseason to show that I was capable of withstanding that abuse, if you want to call it, or training to, you know, let let them know that you belong
Yeah.
in that area.
What do you think it was in your dad? What do you think? What lessons specifically do you think you guys were seeking by taking a walk on route? Because you were a good high school wrestler in Colorado. Many people remember you wrestling in high school. So I'm guessing you had some scholarship offers or some offers to go other places where you'd been a little more status, a little higher status than a walk on. But what was it specifically about the walk on experience that maybe your dad was hoping you were going to get out of, or you were hoping to get?
Well, I wasn't really even planning on wrestling in college. It was I got serious about wrestling. I had always wrestled, but it was always something to do when I wasn't playing football. My dad played football. I wanted to play football. My dream was to play football at Wyoming. And I got a preferred walk on there, but then the coaching staff changed and they told me that was no longer available to me. And I had to, come back in the spring and try out then. I, at that point, the team's already practicing, you kind of feel a little left out. So, on campus, we walked over, me and my dad, and asked if there was a spot on the team. And he was like, yeah, the best, yeah, we'll give you a tryout and see if you can make it. I thought at least I could be a good practice partner, like you said. I always worked hard and I have enough skill to at least give guys a good look. But no, what really got me interested was he was saying, my coach, Mark Branch, he told me in that office, I'm going to start the best guy. And I was like, that's all I need to hear. Because there's a little politics to be played with football. I'm not the fastest dude ever, and I'm not the tallest dude ever. And those things, I don't necessarily pass the eye test in a football uniform. But, you don't have to in wrestling. There's some goofy looking wrestlers that do all right.
So what would you say is a takeaway you got from that experience that'll stay with you the rest of your life?
Same. So sorry. Yeah. Didn't answer your first question. That I didn't quit. And my dad would tell you the same thing. Like, like walking on, there's a little doubt in your head. Just, like maybe I don't belong here. And, it's easy to quit. A bunch of people quit. A bunch of walk-ons quit, because they might not feel like they're getting attention, and that it's easier to take on a victimhood mentality when you're kind of joining the team instead of being asked. But there was a time in my dad's career and a time in my career where we both, like, I had transfer papers filled out. I'm ready to go. And the excuse I said in my head was the same exact excuse that I've heard all my friends and anybody on the team that quit used, which was like, it's not my fault. It's my coach's fault. He's not making it fun for me. It's all these external forces. And I stopped and I'm like, man, I don't want that to be me. Like, I'm not gonna, like, why would I give somebody else that power to dictate something in my life, what I want to do?
Right.
And I just decided, like, no, I'm gonna stick it out. I'm gonna finish. And just finishing, like not quitting, was probably the thing I'm most proud of myself in that situation. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think, quite honestly, that there is one of the reasons you relate so well to the people you get to coach, is because, and it's something I've talked about many times, it's not abnormal to think about quitting, right? Everybody I know will think about quitting at something at some point in their life, but it's when you don't quit that you get better, right? It's when you don't quit that you get that sense of pride. And I think that story there, Chaz, is quite honestly one of the reasons you relate well to your students and to this community, is that you didn't have all the answers. It wasn't always rainbows and lollipops and glory. A lot of times it sucked and it was very hard, but you didn't keep moving. You never stopped moving forward, even if you thought about it for a moment, right? And I think that's not just a wrestling story, that's a life story. If we have dreams and goals and we're willing to work towards them, there's going to be times when we're going to question, is this worth it anymore? Well, it's what you do when you're questioning that determines how you're going to feel about it. I mean, can you even imagine what would have happened if you'd have transferred out of there and where you'd be at today and what you'd have felt like?
I would have a hard time being around any of the friends that I made up there. I would feel a little ashamed, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I would have regretted it for a long time, and maybe wouldn't be coaching. And that's something I love to do. Something I think about all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, when you walked on there at Wyoming, you were going through this tough experience of being a walk-on, and everything that we just talked about. What was the other side of your life looking like during that time? What were you in school for? What were you studying? What was campus life like? What was that other side of wrestling during that time?
It was really fun. I studied political science. That was like the third major I landed on. I think I started out engineering and figured out, like, you know what, I actually don't like math all that much. Um, so I picked something that interested me, and in politics, and understanding why people think the way that they do is something that interests me. So that's what I went academically. In my social life, I was all by myself. I was pretty disciplined in high school. And when I say disciplined, I was afraid of my dad and getting in trouble. So I stayed out of it. And then, you have a little freedom, and you're exploring different things with your friends, getting into a little bit of trouble, but it was fun. I definitely for a little bit there, my social life didn't reflect that I was a Division I wrestler. And I think that's, I wasn't like partying every night or anything, but there are little things that weren't helping me get my goals accomplished in terms of wrestling. But it was good. I think it's all for a purpose, and some good lessons learned, growing up a little bit.
Yeah. And when you were thinking about quitting or transferring out of there, did you talk to anybody else about that?
I did. So the reason I'm quitting, well, the reason a lot of people quit is, like I said, it was Branch's fault. It's not my fault. Like, for a lot of guys in that room, they're the best guy on their high school team, or one of them, and they're coming in and they don't have to deal with a lot of adversity. And so when it hits, I feel like our natural reaction is to be like, our ego gets in the way. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. There's no way I'm being soft, or that my failure on the wrestling mat is totally my fault. It's somebody else's. And so I kind of had that victimhood mentality. I had an older kid on the team tell me when I was a freshman, who was going through something similar. What he said was, "Man, you're just a number in that guy's book. He doesn't really care about you." And that stuck with me. And so, carrying that with me, any opportunity I had to take a challenge from my coach as him picking on me or him trying to run me off, I took it as that. I took it as like, man, this guy just hates me. This guy wants me to fail. And so, like, our egos got in the way. I'm pissed off at him. I have a really bad performance one year, and he poked me in the chest and said, "You'll never put on a singlet for me again." And like, I'm like, all right, well, that's it. I'm leaving. And he brought me into his office at the end, like going into my senior year. And he said, "You know what, Chaz, you can probably be a practice partner. You can stick around as a practice partner, but I'm probably going to start one of these incoming freshmen." And, come to find out, he told that he said the same thing to all my roommates. So I don't know if he was being serious, but he was trying to elicit a response of like, all right, like he was challenging us. And I decided, I sought out some advice from my mentors before I made a decision. I talked to my dad. It was one of the first times in my life where my dad was wrong to me, where he was like, "Yeah, you just transfer. Let's get out of there." Right. It was one of the first times where, like, okay, maybe he doesn't know the right answer. And I knew he didn't know the right answer. And so I was like, man, I'm going to not listen to my dad for one of the first times in my life about something big. And then go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, how did you know that, Chaz? Because I think that's big right there because you just referred to your dad as your Superman, to have that self-awareness of making a decision different than what your dad's suggested, that's a big moment. How did you know that you needed to go in a different direction than what your dad suggested?
I think I knew the truth deep down that I was being a little bit of a victim in the situation, and I don't know if it was my pride that wouldn't let me realize that in my head, but it was maybe a feeling. He was like, yeah, it was the first time that he had suggested I quit anything. And so, transferring to me was a form of quitting, and I had never heard my dad suggest I quit anything. ever. And so I knew like maybe this guy who I take all this advice from wants the best for me, and he certainly does, but maybe he just doesn't know what that is.